Now. Welcome everybody. So this is, we call Vibe with Your Tribe. It's just a way for us to all keep connecting while we are not on lockdown, especially here in South Africa. So we're trying to get more engagement going. So last week we started the first one, and this week we want to expand it by bringing in some race directors for a little bit of a Q&A roundtable discussion. And also we've got Phillipp Reiter with us he's from Germany, but he's in Austria at the moment. So it's great to have him here to give us some perspective of what's going on in Europe. To give you just a breakdown on who's here, I'll let them introduce themselves, but we've got Eloff Hoffman from Fresh Trails. So he's got his race, the Mac, that would usually happen in a month's time. We've got Spurgeon, who runs UTD, who actually his event would have been this weekend, and he's had some interesting stuff going on with a bit of a UTD in your back garden that started today, so we can hear from him. Then we've got Pure Adventures with Adrian. I don't know if Michael's on. And then we've also got the Maxi Race team, as well as Landie and Christiaan from who are based in Stellenbosch Athletes. So I just want to quickly go through those people so they can introduce themselves. So Eloff, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So yeah, we're the guys from Fresh Trails, a couple of small trails, and then a couple of ultras with our big one, the Mac, which got cancelled last weekend. We had to cancel it as well. So yeah, we down here in the Eastern Cape at actually a very cool spot for the weekend on a friend's house on the beach in Cannon Rocks. So yeah, I've got a great view, but unfortunately it's dark here, so you guys can't see it. But I've got the fire going and I've got a beer, so we're going to have a lekker chat.
Cool, thank you. Spurge, on to you.
How's it, guys? Apologies, my camera is broken on my laptop, so I'm not sure what you can see from that side. Probably not much, but yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so we've got a few events. Obviously, Ultra Trail Drakensberg is our headline one, which should be, I'm just looking at my clock, 9 hours and 7 minutes into the 100 miler as we speak, but obviously that's not happening. We've got quite a fun sort of backyard virtual UTD going on at the moment, which has actually been really warmly received. I think mainly because most of those athletes would normally be out there running have now got nothing to do in terms of their phones and that, and are actually engaging so nicely on social media. So it's been really good in terms of the engagement we've had there. Yeah, and then we've got a couple of other events, the Giants Cup Trail Run, Sani Stagger and Stagger Trail, and then the conservation fundraiser we do, the Rhino Peak Challenge.
Cool, thanks, Spurge. Okay, Philip, let's hear from you.
Yes, I'm Phillipp Reiter from Germany, now being in exile in Austria at my girlfriend's place because you're not allowed to travel within Europe, so the borders are closed. But I've mentioned before, the lockdown here in Austria is over, so you are allowed with some restrictions. You can pretty much move freely, which is cool because it's nice weather. Sorry for you, but it's what's happening right now here. And yeah, the restrictions are that you need to keep distance. You put the mask around nose and mouth when you go shopping. And yes, well, I had the chance to be once in South Africa for the Sky Run. That was really cool. I think it's now 4 years ago, 4 years. And yes, so I didn't finish. I just finished a small one. So I think I need to come back one day.
You definitely need to come back and show us how it's done on the bigger route.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks for that, Philip. Yeah, let's move on to the Greylings. I see they have joined them.
How's it, guys? We are having a nice braai outside. I'm talking a bit with a loud voice because Christopher is sleeping in that tent and he just went to bed. But we are literally sitting on the Maxi route, and it's a beautiful evening. And yeah, Landie is just joining, so she should be able to hear me. But yeah, it's awesome to chat to all of you guys. Philip, good to see you again. This time you're not running around with a camera behind us. Spurge, I don't know if I'm happy or sad that I'm not running through the night tonight, but it's a beautiful night here. So I think I'm a bit sad because looking at where we are, there's definitely something we miss, some of the ingredients in our life. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the chat tonight. Landie, anything
Yeah,
from
I
your
think
side?
I definitely won't be having wine the evening before 100-miler or as much red wine. But yeah, this is great to share with everyone, and we're looking forward to everyone's contribution and just having a fun chat.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to introduce Adrian. I think Adrian can do both Pure Adventures and Maxi being in both, and then we can start moving on to some of the discussions.
Yeah, how's it, guys? Adrian Saffy here from Pure Adventures, and we partners with the guys from Emoya and with Landie and Christiaan them for Maxi Race. So yeah, events in our stable. The big daddy is the Sky Run for us, for Pure Adventures side. Oldest ultra in SA. It's been, yes, I think our 23rd year. We've also got the Four Peaks Mountain Challenge. We got the War Trail is a multi-sport event, and yeah, then we partners in Maxi Race, which is a super exciting event, second year. So that's us, and yeah, look forward to chatting to you guys.
Cool, thanks, Adrian. I just want to note, I see we've also got another international here, Matisse. Matisse, I'll come back to you at the end and you can give us an update. Matisse is based in France, so it'll be very interesting to hear from somebody in France. They've been quite hard hit from COVID-19. So I think after this discussion, we'll give Matisse some time to give us some input on what's happening there. And thank you for joining, Matisse. I just want to start out and say, like, obviously this is very trying times, and a lot of these events are businesses in themselves, and most organizers aren't doing it full time, but they are doing part time. And I think I just want to first, like, a lot of people who are going to view this both now and in the recording, see it from the athlete's perspective. So I want to try and capture like the how it feels as an organizer to deal with this, especially in the uncertainty around like refunds and like athletes being frustrated because they can't come to the event. So I just want to kick it off by, I think let's start with Eloff, and just like, he canceled his event recently with the Mac. And I just want to see, like, how's that been from him from a business perspective, both from athletes, like being supportive, have they been frustrated? And yeah, I'll just let Eloff. I think we may have lost him, so don't know if he's there. We can't hear him. But okay, let's move to Spurge. Spurgeon, can you give some input on that with your race meant to have been this weekend?
Yeah, Matt, I mean, it's obviously been a massive blow for us, especially so late in the day. I mean, this kicked off for us basically 5 weeks before race day, so we were pretty locked and loaded. So we made the decision we moved really quickly, and in hindsight, you know, that seemed to have been the right move to make. I think the most important thing that people wanted was clarity, and we just decided to give them as much clarity as quickly as possible. So we didn't think about postponing or anything. We just said, look, these dates work for us. We know what the rest of the calendar looks like. The COVID pandemic there's so many unknowns, so we don't want to just kick this can down the road and end up really sort of inconveniencing people and just basically causing a lot of upheaval in people's lives. So yeah, so we made the call to cancel, and yeah, the implications of cancelling. How's it, Eloff? You back?
Yeah, sorry, I'm back on my phone. Laptop
All good.
stuff.
We lost you there for a sec. Yeah, so we made the decision to cancel, and yeah, the financial implications are pretty heavy, especially closer to race day, because obviously your outlay is bigger the closer you get to race day. But what can you do? You know, so we sort of thought the most important thing is to look after our our base, our fans, our supporters, our runners. If you lose those guys in the process, then you really are buggered going forward. So we thought, what's the best thing we can do to keep those guys on board, and then we'll sort of roll with it as we go. So we made the decision to just roll everyone's entries over to 2021, which obviously isn't a great financial decision, but refunding everyone at that stage was too late. So we thought, there was no real middle ground, and that was the best option. So we rolled everyone to 2021, and then we tried to put a big sort of silver lining on that and say, well, at least when we open for entries for 2021, we're going to have 400 odd athletes entered on day one, and then we just have to build from there. So the base of the pyramid essentially is fairly big. So we're trying to put a silver lining on it in that regard. But yeah, it's tough, and as I'm sure everyone else, has similar challenges. So that's kind of been our attitude with UTD, which is, as we say, literally. What we also then decided to do is we hadn't made any plans to do anything formal with UTD over the event weekend. But then when they extended the lockdown by another 2 weeks, we realized that the extension of the lockdown was now going to cover the original UTD dates. So once they did that, then we thought, no, we've got to do something more formal. And we quickly launched the UTD sort of lockdown run. And it's been very warmly received. Obviously, we made it a free entry with an optional donation to 2 of our main race beneficiaries, and I think that was the right move. And it's been very warmly received, and we've got a lot of guys out there. I think we've got over 1,000 entries, in the last couple of days, and I think we're sitting at about 1,100 as we speak. Our entries close at midday tomorrow. So yeah, I think it's been a great marketing effort and a great way to bring the community together in these times where we don't have any other options. That's kind of been our attitude with UTD. With regard to, quickly, I know the other guys want to talk, with regard to our events further down the road, we had Giants Cup lined up for, is normally the 3rd week of May, so we've postponed that to the end of October. But given the sort of information we got last night from the president, that's also looking a little iffy, but we're not going to make decisions until we have to make decisions. So right now we focus on UTD. Sani Stagger Trail is at the end of November. So we have opened for entries in the beginning of March, and we've got, I think, about just under 400 runners there entered, but everything's obviously in limbo right now. So we're just watching that space. So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Spurge. I think you covered quite a lot of topics that people are thinking about. Eloff, I'm going to come back to you now, but I first just want to get Philip. Can you give us an idea of how race organizers are doing in Europe? Are they giving refunds when they're canceling events? Are they rolling it over? How are they dealing with this like unsure times? You said Austria opened up, but I'm assuming no races are taking place. So I just want to get a perspective of the event landscape in Europe.
Yeah, so for example, here in Austria, all events are forbidden until the end of August. So it's strictly forbidden. Also not if you are below a certain number, is forbidden. And race organizers still pretty different. So some are taking all the inscriptions from this year to the next year. And some are offering that people can get a refund of their current entry fee. But they are like, well, if you are not in financial troubles, please don't do it because we are in financial troubles otherwise. So they are not really begging, but it's a kind of, hey, if you're still in a good position financial-wise, don't do it, leave it, because we already had some financial payment in front payments already. And for me personally, I really like the attitude to let people choose what they can afford. I mean, if you have a family, you have 3 kids and you have no job anymore within these 5 weeks, and you need every euro, then it's good. And you have maybe paid already 5 entries of 100 euros, and you need every euro, so it's fair enough not to take it from them. But some other people have more work than ever before, so they can afford this. So I really like the idea of letting people choice, but saying, hey, we also, if you want that our event survives, we want, please don't take the entries back. And yes, and now a lot of the events are still, so I would say like 1/3 of the events are postponed to autumn. So it's pretty tight in autumn now. Let's see if they are still allowed to do it in autumn, but it's every weekend, it's like 3, 4, 5 races same time. So, which is also not really that good for participants, because they might have registered for one race, which is now the same date than the one from summer, which got postponed. So it's a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it, how it is.
Yeah, that's very interesting that the race organizers there are giving choice to athletes. I did see that Gary Robbins with his race, the Squamish 50, he offered refunds, and he had quite a lot of people actually contact him and saying, please, we don't want you to give the money back. We just want you to make sure that you're financially okay. And
Exactly.
He did present that option in the end, and he did seem to have a good, like the people who needed the money asked for the money back, and the people that wanted to see it as sort of a donation to make sure this event still prospers, that continues. So I think that might probably be the better way to handle it.
And there was another cool idea what popped up in Germany. It's quite a big race. It's called Rennsteiglauf. They have about 40,000 people. It's not a marathon, but it's like a trail, but an easy trail. And they were saying, well, you have one option to get the entries back. The second option, we do a virtual race, or you do a virtual race, because people are, as I said, now it's more open, but in Germany, you're allowed in some states to go 10 kilometers around your house, so in the reach of 10 kilometers. So they can do the race distance around their house. And if they kind of prove with their watch that they have done the race distance, they get the finisher t-shirt, they get a certificate. So it's a kind of helping the race to survive and still being part of the race. I really like this idea.
Yeah, the virtual races are definitely taking off, and I think we'll see more innovation in that area. So I think we can speak to that later, but I think what's going to be key for a lot of race organizers now is how do you adapt to this environment, because we're still uncertain how long it goes on. And that's definitely going to be one of the keys is promoting a more virtual experience where people still feel involved. And I think Spurgeon has shown that people are really willing to capture that spirit because they want to feel a part of something. So he had 1,000 people competing at his event virtually this weekend. And here in South Africa, we have to do it all in our garden. You're not even allowed 10 Ks around your house. Here, it has to be in your garden. Eloff, you recently had to cancel the MacMac. How did you deal with refunds, and how's been the reception from athletes from your perspective?
Yeah, Matt, luckily we had, well, luckily, I say luckily, it's not really luckily, but Spurge had to cancel his first. So we had a example of what is happening. We're very optimistic guys, so we thought, yes, we're going to stick out as long as we can and see if we still can host in some way, host MacMac, but yeah, it became impossible. And I did speak to Spurge a lot and just got how his approach worked out. So we used more or less the same approach as Spurge, also just to give the entries, that the people that's already in there, the option to use their entry for next year, and then also for 2022 and 23. So we roll it over for 3 years, so you can use without extra costs. You can use it for the next 3 years. Yeah, we want to use those entries. Well, we're working at a loss already, so building the event was last year was the first year of event. So I mean, the other organizer will tell you that it takes a couple of years where you keep investing to build it up to something. So we were optimistic to see if we can make a profit this year. So now we're even bigger in the red, but we want to build it to a big event next year. So get more entries than we would have had this year, just to cover the costs that we had lost over the last 2 years. So that's our approach. The thing is, really want the guys to get. We love our trail, the Mac, and it's a very special place, and we want guys to experience it, and we really want the guys to come out there. I had I think one of the French runners, Phillipp, where he said the refunds come in. I think there's a in the South African trail community, there's a lot of refunds, or not refunds, moving it over to the next year type of approach, where I see the overseas guys do a lot of refunds. I think that's where one of our French runners asked for a refund, and he couldn't understand it. We're not going to do a refund. We're just going to move over the entry to next year, or the year after, or the year after. So if he leaves the country, or if he's from overseas, I'm sure he can plan his travels for the next 3 years to come back, to come and run it. Yeah, so it's been hard for us. And we're going to try and make it bigger next year, see if we can bring in more distances to cover more runners to come and run. So there might be some surprises coming in for the Mac. We had a little run. We also had our backyard run, the UBTC Ultra Backyard Trail Challenge, which me and Frikkie just ran around in our houses and challenged each other, and then put it on Facebook. And suddenly we had also, I think we have 250 guys already finished the ultras around their houses. Guys running on their balconies. There was a guy in the Bahamas running in his Speedo on a yacht, in his South African, his FUF Speedo. Some interesting stuff coming through. It just shows you that the South African trail community is a bunch of crazy oaks, and we I say for all the trail runners out there, the South African runners, we take the hard times we make the best out of our hard situation, and and get the best out of it. I've seen it this week. I mean, just the guys that ran the last 3 weeks, ran this backyard trail of ours. There was, I think, at least 50 or more guys that did it for charities, that got money in for charities. At first we started and said, hey, we thought 10 guys are gonna commit to doing it, and thought, oh well, let's throw in a cap. We'll make a cap for the guys that gets to finish it. We thought it's like maybe 10 guys that would run around the ultra around their houses, and we already got over 200 guys that finished. So we asked for some donations to cover our cap. We don't have any income for the next, I guess for the next at least 4 months, we won't have trails or in the way we used to. And a lot of donations coming through for that. So that's great. And we started selling some merchandise. So yeah, you have to use other ways to start getting income, virtual runs and even merchandise and spin-offs of the trail community. So going forward, we had our news yesterday of the next couple of months, what we can plan for the next couple of months from legislation. So with that, we have to start making plans and see what we can do for runners out there. People are hungry to get out there. If there's some guys that can give us some suggestions tonight or plans or whatever we can try and do for trail running in South Africa, we'd love to do it. So that's a mouthful.
It is, but I think this whole situation is a mouthful. So definitely appreciate the input. I'm going to change gears there to quickly go on to what we see in the future. So we've got Adrian and Michael here, so we'll see which one of them. So they've taken the choice for the few events. Luckily, none of their events were coming up during this time so much, but there's a few events now coming up in sort of the later time, September and just October, November. And I know they've gone for a strategy of offering 100% refunds on entries that are committing now to try and get people to train for something. Because I think a lot of athletes are creatures that want to aim for a goal and go out and achieve it. And with all this uncertainty, a lot of people are umming and ahhing about things. And like, if you're not sure if you're going to get a refund or not, that's one of the things they're thinking about. So I don't know if Michael or Adrian just wants to give some of their thoughts behind that and how they've seen the reception from that from the community.
Yeah, Mike, whoever.
Okay, I'll talk, Seth. Hi, guys. So from our side, I think, we've obviously got this initiative with Maxi, make Maxi your goal. And this is, I guess it's been, we've had quite a nice uptake. I wouldn't say it's been brilliant, but we've definitely had a lot of, we've had entries. So yeah, I think, as we get closer to sort of coming out of lockdown and closer to the events, and if the events happen, I think your people will definitely get more engaged. So, but I do think it's difficult for guys to commit to 100K or 120Ks as a long distance on the maxi is, without sort of being able to train. So let's see what the legislation says now regarding being able to exercise going forward. It looks quite positive, so that I think that's a good thing for all of us, and I do think that will help with entries. Obviously, our other events, Four Peaks and Skyrun, we've also had entries, so it's not like entries have dried up completely, but we've also given a lot of refunds, especially for Skyrun. I don't know why, but it's just maybe people just feel they aren't going to get the time to do the miles for a tough race like that. So yeah, it's been an interesting and difficult time. Let's say that. But we want to keep on innovating, and we always want to keep on trying. I think we've heard some great ideas here around if we need to cancel events. I think that there's a couple of nice ideas coming out of Europe, and I quite like the idea of giving people the option to help race organizers stay afloat. Because let's be honest, guys, this is going to be the most challenging time for us. We lost in the queue, us with hotels, conference centers, cinemas, restaurants, events. We're definitely lost in the queue. So whether or not we'll get races in October, November, and December, we'll see. We're hopeful. As Eloff said, he's optimistic. I'm also very optimistic by nature. And so let's see. We are developing some other nice innovative stuff with Matt will tell you about, which will give you some options, Eloff, and other race organizers to try and earn a little bit of income. So we'll discuss that just now. But yeah, I think in general, people are a little bit scared to enter at the moment, but we have seen entries despite the difficult times.
Yeah, thanks for that input. It's interesting to see races out. I did see Andrew Booth join. Andrew, I'm going to come to you just now because I'm just going to switch a little bit because we've been on this topic for a little bit, but I have seen you there. So Andrew Booth's from KZN Trail and also runs one of the bigger 100-milers or the biggest 100-miler in South Africa, which is the Carcliff 100, which is an amazing event. If anybody hasn't done it yet, it's definitely one to look out for. So Andrew, I will come to you just now. I want to switch gears to the athlete's perspective right now. We've got a few pretty good athletes here. And when I say pretty good, they're really good. So I'm going to ask the Greylings, they obviously had events they were planning to do, and how they are they still training for those events? How they're dealing with the sort of mental motivation to push for those events, or are they sort of tentatively thinking those events will be cancelled? And yeah, I just want to sort of get your perspective on how athletes can deal with this.
Yeah, hi everyone. I think it's initially when the lockdown was announced and all events were cancelled, I think all of us were kind of, we were up in arms and had no idea what to do because, I think as a professional or semi-professional athletes, you're always training for a goal, you're always training for a race, and you're very goal-driven and race orientated. So it's kind of a natural thing. And when it initially happened, you like, okay, well, maybe it's just postponed a month later. That's not, too bad. We'll just continue sort of training in a certain way, maybe not the way you were used to, but we'll just continue training. But I think when the idea of, the races aren't going to happen in the next 3 to 4 months at least, then your whole mindset starts to change, and as humans we start to adapt in a certain way. And I know, also being a coach, that a lot of my athletes just sort of said, we have nothing to train for, we don't know what's going on, there's no you know, sort of foreseeable future. And I think that's what makes it hard at this stage, which is what is great what the current race organizers are doing, like, you know, the UTT and you guys, Eloff. I mean, giving people the option to just still do something and still be part of it and still have a reason for training. I think that's very important. But on the other hand, it also allows you to, or it also allowed me to ask the question, do I really just train to do a race, or do I really train to enjoy and to be fit and to be in the mountains? And I can honestly say for me, it's been very hard to train in exactly the same way I did as I was when I was entered for a race, because I love the mountains, and I love, you know, being at the top of the mountain and summiting and doing, you know, long hours in the mountains. So it's been difficult to just sort of run around our property, and we're very fortunate we can still run further than most people, but it is harder because, you know, I feel like I want to spend time in the mountains, and now I have to just train to train. I don't know if that's the same feeling with some of the other athletes. I know there's guys doing 100 milers and comrades distances in the gardens and in the properties. But I've found it very difficult to do those kinds of runs because I just want to be out in nature and want to be out in the mountains.
Yeah, thanks, Landie. I think I can resonate with that a lot as well. Like, I haven't run a single meter since the start of the lockdown because I don't run necessarily just to keep fit. It's like an experience for me, and it's very hard to capture in your back garden. So, Philip, can you give us some comments on that as well? Like, how are you dealing with with the uncertainty of knowing what races are coming up, and how are you training for that?
Well, it was interesting what Landie was saying, because I personally think, well, racing is the one thing, but we really love being outdoors and run, and races is just one part. And even if a lot of races are cancelled now, which is pretty sad, but you still have the opportunity maybe to think differently and say, well, this year I might not need to be stressed because mid-April is this race, it's followed by this and this and this. So open your eyes and maybe you find a new own project, what you would like to do, and something totally different. And it's still running, and it's still what we love to do. So, you know, all the coronavirus actually is breaking a little bit the circle what we used to be in, and where there is no time to get out because you're always in a rush, you're always stressed, and it's always like moving around. And now it's like a global stop. And you might know when you are on holidays and the company is still working, when you go back to your office, you have 1,000 emails. But now you have no emails being locked down in the lockdown, because everyone, it's the same for everyone. And this is really a cool chance to really do things what you might have had in mind for a long time. And now it's really the time to do it, because you have the time, and you don't need to be stressed because it's the same for everyone.
Yeah, that's an awesome attitude. It's so true. It's like you don't have this pressure, because let's be honest, a lot of us who push ourselves in training, it does become a stress because it's something that consumes quite a lot of your life and adds a lot of extra pressure. So you do have this sort of pressure taken off, and you allowed to do other things. So I think that's a very positive way to look at it, Philip. I thank you for that perspective. I want to ask, I see we got Clint on. So Clint's more from a multi-sport background, doing a lot more adventure racing and cycling. I'd be keen to hear, like, in his backyard, there's probably little he can do. Clint, do you want to, I don't know if you can get on your microphone, but let me unmute you. Clint, you there?
Yeah, I can hear you, Matt. How are you? How's it, guys? So we were, I mean, you guys all know, we found out that Cape Epic was cancelled the day before we were actually getting ready to race Cape Epic for Land Rover. So, I mean, you know, all the preparation for Epic going down, and there was quite a bit of backlash that Epic cancelled it, and Epic cancelled it so late and that sort of thing. And I think we can all see this from a race director's perspective, like, filtered down mean, Epic did it without government intervention or before we in this situation we're at the moment. So, you know, I think that was the catalyst that got everything going. But from an athlete perspective, it is, you don't quite know what's happening. We've got world champs in Paraguay in September. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, and whether we actually want to travel, to be honest. I mean, is it a risk to travel? So that's one of the biggest things, is that, you know, do we want to go and race overseas? Do we want to go and travel, get into the airport, put that sort of risk? And I don't think that's going to happen. So which means for us, the year's a write-off. So what we need to do is plan for local races, local events, and try and focus on getting, you know, it's actually a good attitude listening to a lot of the guys as well, is getting back to the grassroots. You know, there's a lot of good local races that we can do, and that we need to be supporting, because I think you know, all these races and all these sporting events that are there, times are going to be tough, guys. I'm being realistically, financially. I run a business, Mike. I know you also heavily involved in business and stuff like that, but, you know, times are tough. So from a race director's perspective, it must be just as tough to try and attract people to these events that are worried about how many people are there. And then you get, you know, talking to a whole lot of other athletes that they don't really care. They just want to go out and race, and if they get sick, they get sick. But then you get a handful of people that will be a lot more cautious and say, no, they won't go out and race. So who are you attracting when I don't know if the Golden Gate guys are out, or if that race is still going ahead, but they reduced their numbers to 80 or something like that.
Andrew is on here as well, so you can direct it to Andrew.
So I mean, so like that thing as well, is you've got so many guys that are, I think, willing to race, because it's a numbers game at the end of the day. It's trying to get the people. There are willing people that have the cash, or that will scramble the cash because it's their life. It's what they do as an escape from every other day and every other day pressures. That's the reality. So if the events are there and the events are taking precautions and stuff like that, I mean, I cannot see people not going to go and race these events. You may not get the numbers, but you certainly, and that's the toss-up. I mean, Skyrun, Mike, I'm surprised to hear people are pulling out of Skyrun, because most of the people that I'm talking to, that's like their main focal point at the moment. And to be honest, that's my focal point at the moment. I mean, I don't think I have many races. If World Champs is not happening in Paraguay, it's November, and that's Skyrun, you know?
Yeah, Clint, sorry, Matt. Clint, can I throw you something in there? Are we sure that we're going to have numbers, 80 people, 100 people, possible to run these events even in August, September, November? I don't know if they're going to let us do any events this year. So even with Andrew, that's limiting Golden Gate and some of these other runs to 80 runners already, I think that's already maybe taking entries where we're not sure that we'll be able to host those events. I know the refund option is there. If you enter now, we'll refund you 100%. So we should go that way. But I doubt if we're going to have big events this year. I think we should go on like cage fighting events with a secret sunrise somewhere, and it's a code. You get an SMS half an hour before the race, and we go and race illegal races. I think that's the only races we're going to have this year is something like that.
Is underground races. So, you know, I'm talking now talking from a business perspective, because at the end of the day, it needs to be profitable. If this is what you're doing as a business, you cannot put on these events just for giggles and it has to be profitable. You have to cover the costs at the basics, and then you still need to make money in order to sustain a livelihood.
From an
so
organizer's
at the end of the day, there has to
sorry, just to give you a figure, we work on our Sunday runs to host a Sunday run, which is the small distance runs, a 5 or 10 and say a 15 or 20K run, we need at least 300 runners to break even on those type of events. So to have just 80 or 100 runners, or do a virtual event where you stagger it through a day and just have 100 guys pitching up, it's not profitable. You can cut costs with timekeeping and medics and stuff like that, but then you lose the event feel of it. So then you can go back to running those trails on your own.
So you have an actual very good point there. So just so I was riding Cape Epic with Carl Brown, and we were gung ho. Listen, we're going to ride the event anyway. And then, to be honest, and you hit the point now as well as, and I think it's with all these points, and even for Skyrun as well, is we didn't want to go to Cape Epic and ride Cape Epic and then jump. When you finish the ride, jump in the car, go to the bed and breakfast, and then that's it. So you have no experience. So it's not a Cape Epic event. You're losing that entire an environment that you've created for your event by everybody running scared. Do you know what I mean? Does it do more damage? Does it do more reputational damage to the event, or does it? Are we just being very cautious? So I mean, you guys need to look at it. Say, do we limit the amount? Exactly. You do the underground races, and you get a couple of people there, like enthusiasts and that sort of thing, and then go. When we're allowed to go running and racing again, I mean, 300 people, there's no way they're going to allow 300 people. Not this year. I can't see that happening.
So guys, I'm going to cut you off there just so we can give some time for some more people to talk. But I definitely want to dive in after that to some more of this conversation, because I think it leads on. So Andrew, I just want to give you an opportunity now to give us your insight, because you're from KZN Trail, and you're definitely trying to already do this with limiting numbers and stuff. And just to give your insight there, what your thinking is and how you're going to approach this.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly. That beard is getting big.
No. Yeah, well, we're doing what we have to do, hey? And I think I've just come in a little bit late. Sorry about that. And from what I'm gauging and everyone's, I think at this stage I'm slightly more optimistic as to what can be done with, and my approach is about getting people on trails, which, the event part, yes, I agree, is pretty much completely sacrificed and compromised for the year. But we think that there are ways to get people out there through batching and phase starting and keeping. I mean, if you keep your groups small enough, I don't think it'll be massively profitable, but I think it'll get people onto the trail, which is our kind of thoughts around bridging the gap between where we are now, where we're running around our gardens, and where we're going to be maybe next year again, where we can turn the taps on again. So it's hard to gauge exactly what restrictions we're going to be put under and when we might be able to be released. But we're hoping that June, July, we've actually pegged the date for us as 21 June, because we felt it's soon, but we felt we needed to put something down. And what we've done is said that we've got a 2.5 hour window starting period. We're going to put 200 runners, which is an average of 1:30 between them. We've sold it in a particular way. We've given the guarantee that you don't lose your entry fees, etc. We've asked people to kind of step up and support us in the structure. We're going to experiment with it. We're going to work towards that date to have it signed off, so to speak, with who we need to, and hope that the phase we're under is low enough and the restrictions allow it. Maybe we're pegging it too soon, but we don't have time to waste, because we're so invested in it, from everything from life to finance to everything. So I hope we make it through the other side. I really do, like everyone, I suppose. We're all wondering, but that's taking it day by day, and that's the approach. I hope we see at least something going on this year. That's kind of where we're standing at the moment. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see, because I think part of what we were talking about earlier is here in the Cape, we're trying to do like a virtual race where we're doing a predefined marked route where people enter and then they just go do it in their own time to try to get people to do it, like, and give guidelines. If you see lots of people there, don't start then, and then you basically upload your GPX file to Strava or onto the thing, and then you give it. So you still give this competitive aspect that athletes want, but you take away the need for people to congregate in mass batches and stuff.
Yeah. I think one thing that we have in KZN that we offer when we're hosting an event for a lot of people, especially our women runners, is safety and security, and each venue is quite unique in KZN, and there are places for sure that are safer to run than others, but that is something that's quite big here. So we've got to work around that and create opportunities for people to get out there, probably in limited times when we can keep kind of those spaces, secure to a point. Yeah, I mean that is what drives a lot of our running here, to be honest. Yeah,
it's the same, Andrew. It's the same with Pretoria and Joburg runs. It's people that can't run, and Fort Klapperkop that's been in the news a lot. Safety aspects that come for the events to run there. There is the parks you can run in, which is safe, like Trail Wolf, Wolversprite, or places like those. You can run in safe, but the event field won't be there.
Yeah, that's
Matt, if I could just quickly contribute there. And also, I think a big factor that we also have to consider on all levels is the interdependence of service providers. So we might be able to have a trail run and separate people or keep them apart, but it's based at a hotel, or it's based at a restaurant, or it crosses interprovincial borders, or it requires international travelers. And all these things, unfortunately, realistically, need to be considered. So these are also limiting factors. We can't just live in a bubble of, okay, we managed to condition our events, and Andrew, I'm definitely not, referring to you here. I'm just talking in general about how all these other external factors are impacting on us while we're trying to, I wouldn't say manipulate, but work the situation so that we can get through this. We have to be aware that the doors might be closed on, from external sources that we just can't control. Like for instance, all our events, I mean, we've just moved UTD's base to Sani Pass Hotel. And if you look at the shutdown levels going forward, a place like Sani Pass Hotel is right at the end of the list of things that are going to be allowed to be open. So we're very vulnerable in that regard. And Sani Stagger and Stagger Trail is also based at Sani Pass Hotel. So we might actually get to the situation where we can have an event, but we've lost our base. So these are the kind of factors that also need to be considered. I just wanted to chuck that into the mix.
Guys, sorry, can I just come in here quickly? The only time we're going to be allowed to have any sporting events is if we're at level 1. Because level 1, then you're allowed interprovincial travel. And there's people don't understand, there's also a curfew that you're only allowed out between certain hours. So from our side, we're optimistic that that come the back end of the year, 6 months' time, hopefully we're at level 1. And just regarding sporting events, myself and Mark discussed this. There's a lot of difference between sporting events. Like it's a blanket cover sporting events, but there's a difference between a soccer game with 80,000 spectators in a stadium and basically a trail where you're running and you're social distancing. And I think yesterday in the president's speech, there was an important part that a lot of people missed. It said that people can apply to have certain things allowed or not allowed. So I think that's also an option. That something like this might bring event organizers, the running community more together, especially in the trail running world, because it's been so fractured, to stand together and to say, listen, guys, our sporting event, the risks here are totally different to a soccer game with 80,000 fans in it. So I think we have to be optimistic that these levels 2, 3, and 4 aren't going to be here with us for super long, because you know, the whole economy with those levels is still going to take a massive knock.
So Adrian, you bring up an interesting point, because I thought about it. Like, trail running, by the nature that it's diversified, doesn't have a governing body, and usually that's seen as a good thing because a lot of race organizers are against that. But in times like this, there's no actual formal mechanism there to approach government, besides maybe getting together as a group and actually formally approaching them individually or as a group. But that is one of the problems that you have in this current scenario about not having some sort of official structure to actually go and like do that.
Matt, can I just say something on that? So
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have been following the press, but Pedal Power Association has applied to the government exactly what Adrian was saying now, is that the Cycling Federation has applied to the government to get special leave to put, whether they're classifying them as events or not professional cycling events, but putting recreational riding together. So Pedal Power Association is putting that together, how they're doing it or what their parameters are. But exactly what Matt said is that that's the body, whether I mean, there's a lot of problems with that, because they've had a lot of backlash where people are saying, you know, where their safety is, and you can only leave house, or you can go cycling in a pair, but it has to be a pair from the same house. And then you've got ladies that are coming back saying, well, wait a minute, I'm the only person that cycles in my house. You're telling me I can only go ride by myself, so now that's a safety risk. So, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, Adrian, you can probably be better equipped to talk about that aspect, but you know, the Pedal Power Association is doing that on behalf of the cycling community.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something we're lacking. I just want to ask quickly, we've got quite a few other people in the chat, in the conversation here that haven't talked. Does anybody have any questions for anybody here? Like, I'd love to just open it up and just say, like, there's a host of and wealth of information here and people's brains to pick. Would anybody like to ask a question?
I just want to know if Fricky's got a beer with him. Can you just ask Fricky if he's got a beer there?
Fricky Pina, have you got a beer with you? That's
Can we all just do a cheers there? Fricky, cheers, Mickey.
Matt, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah. Has anyone felt the effect of loss of sponsorship up to this point? Have any sponsors pulled out of races? Is there any sort of backlash from corporate South Africa in terms of races or events?
Mike, if I can jump in there. We don't have any title sponsors for our events. I think, as we all know, I mean, you guys are well established with Skyrun, but you know, title sponsorship and presenting sponsorship is very hard to come by. But certainly our mid-level sponsors, and that, just with regard to the UTD lockdown run, have really been super supportive. I don't know if it's just a temporary thing because they've got nothing else to do, but certainly in the short term, you know, we've asked them, for instance, for prizes and a whole lot of stuff for the UTD lockdown run, and I mean, they responded very quickly and positively. I think they possibly, you know, were looking for outlets for any form of marketing in the current environment. I don't know if that will last. I think we might start getting those don't come Monday letters, you know, in the medium term, but certainly in the short term, our sponsors have been great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Spurgeon.
Thanks, Spurgeon. Grobler, did you have a question there? We see you getting active.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. That was actually my same question. Look, for us as athletes, I feel like it's like a secondary issue. We can go into mountains when the lockdown is lifted and we can still train, but obviously our hearts go out to race organizers, which keeps us, you know, motivated to a certain extent. So I actually had the same thought about what about sponsorships? Because I mean, you guys obviously will make clever plans to get to next year, because I think that's the only time we'll get to big races again, or big, you know, stuff, of people, of 100 people or more. But we all know that sponsors is going to boil down to marketing and getting people there. So for me, it will be interesting to see how title sponsors and events stick with race organizers in this time.
The meeting about races and so on.
Guys, in my opinion, I think sponsorships will last as long as revenue and cash flow lasts in companies. So it's not about if they stick, it's really about having the cash flow to support race organizers and athletes. I think to Grober's point and also to Andrew Booth's point, the one thing that we can take out of this is that trail runners can still go into the mountains in smaller groups. And I think we need to use that as an opportunity to get our sport, growing our sport. So, I mean, we've got an opportunity to take road runners who won't have the opportunity at all to have any races this year, but we can still offer them something on the trails. So it's a good time for us to transition a lot of road runners, which is a big captive market, to some sort of trail, whether it be a 5K, 10K, virtual trail, 10 guys in a group. So all race organizers out there, us as coaches, I think that will be a major focus for us to survive this year and then grow our sport to something bigger thereafter. My 2 pennies.
Yeah, we've seen with this backyard race of ours, we've seen a lot of road runners. I think almost half of the runners taking part in the backyard challenge is road runners, and I think a lot of these guys start realizing there's something more than road running, and I think we're going to have a lot more of. I think what is good about the lockdown is we'll have more road runners trying out trail. I think that's maybe a big positive that came out of it. So yeah, when we start having events again, we can actually concentrate now on getting the road runners to start doing trail.
Yeah, that'll definitely be the case, because trail is generally more niche and smaller numbers. So it'll probably be the case that trail will be a lot more early on than road running. But obviously you're going to run into a numbers game. So maybe you run into race organizers having an issue when you can like start getting slower, like restriction lifts, that their races will be solved out to the cap, whatever that cap is, whether it's 50 people or 100 people. You'll just have to manage it like that. Simon sent me a message. Simon Duvall, you wanted to ask a question? So please, are you still on? Yeah, Simon's
yeah. I'm here. Can you just confirm that you can hear me?
We can hear you 100%.
Cool, thanks. I just wanted to change speed maybe with my question, but my first thing, I just wanted to maybe raise it as an idea or just for the race organizers. I've seen on Instagram Versus Socks are doing some sort of virtual race, and it seems like it's been very well kind of supported, and I think they've got some big sponsors on board. So I thought maybe that's something to just go and check out if you're not aware of it. I think probably you all are, but I think whatever they're doing, I don't know much about it, but it seems like it could be quite a successful thing. So just as a note. And then from my side, I'm very interested in running trail running research at Stellenbosch University. We've got a kind of a budding little team going on there, and trail running research is it's booming a little bit around the globe at the moment, as trail running is as well. And my question was to the race organizers, the various race organizers that are here, whether they are all aware of the ITRA, International Trail Running Association, whether they are aware of the ranking system that the ITRA uses, looking at the distance and the elevation of your race and the technicality, and whether that's something that as South African race organizers we see as important to have our races kind of recognized. I don't know if there's any benefits. Certainly from a research perspective, if you're trying to compare MacMac to UTMB or Maxi Race to Western States or something, you're trying to draw comparisons. It's nice to have a standard. So I was wondering if anyone here is recognized, or do you have to approach the ITRA? How does that work? And just get people's thoughts on that, because I think more and more you're going to see universities wanting to do research at trail races, and races that have that kind of that standard might be seen as more like interesting to go and research, because then I can compare what I'm doing to other people around the globe, other races around the globe.
Simon, I think Mike might be the right person to answer there, because he, I think, was actually on. Mike?
Yeah. So, sorry, I was on the board when we actually put this all in place, ITRA board. So just to give you some background, so International Trail Running Association is anyone can join. So you as an organization can join that as a research organization, and I think there's benefit in that. Most races in South Africa do subscribe to ITRA and use the point system, because our runners want to go and compete internationally, and they want to do the trail sort of mecca, which is UTMB, and you need the points to do that. Unfortunately, the mechanism for this point system is a little bit convoluted, and it's not a true representation of apples with apples. So although it is a standard, it's not a true standard in that, you can have a race. The distance and elevation is not indicative of the nature of that particular race. Okay, so although their formula is pretty standard, it's not true representation of the nature of the race. So let's take an example. The Western States is it's a downhill run actually, and it's actually nearly a road run, to be honest. I mean, I'm not doing it any disservice. It's very quick and very runnable, and the guys that do very well at that are the guys that come from a road running track background, and over the years that more and more people have got involved in trail running, and they've smashed the record year after year, because they've got this pedigree, and that's very runnable. So you can't compare that to a race in the Alps, of similar distance, although they get the same points. So yeah, I think it is a good benchmark. It's a good standard, and it's a good start. But it's not. It's difficult to compare races like that, and that's just my view on it. And just to give you some background on how it all works. And in fact, they keep changing the bloody thing, so which is a little bit frustrating. So, in the past, most of us got proper recognition for our races. Then they changed the rules last year, and now we're having to change our distances to actually get more points so that our athletes can qualify easier. So it's a little bit done in favor. And to be honest, ITRA is not actually a truly representative body of trail. It's actually run by the same family that run the UTMB race. So this has been set up in a way that it actually favors the Poletti family, let's call it. And I'm not being disrespectful here. That's the truth of the matter. And, I'm no longer on that board, so I can say what I want. And, that's my 20 cents worth.
Cool. Thanks for giving input to Simon. I think that mostly encompasses some of the challenges with it. Obviously, it's very important for us local runners that want to go run at any of the races at UTMB that ITRA points are a requirement. So most bigger races, ultra races in South Africa will subscribe to that. Guys, I'm going to cut and ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to cut the conversation here. I think it's been really informative. We have been hosting this weekly, and I want to continue to host this weekly. So we'll have the next one next week, Friday, 7 p.m. I know we're coming off onto a softer lockdown next week. So Liesel, I did see something quickly. I'll just say, as a runner, I must say that I like the idea that race organizers give the runners an option of donating their entry fee or moving it forward, or even a partial refund. It's been frustrated that the only option for some races is moving entries over, because most dates are filled in the second part of the year and even for the next year, and there are clashes. I'd be happy to just donate the money. It may sound silly, but to have the option makes that we are feeling considered. So I think that's something, Liesel, thank you very much for that. I think race organizers here will definitely take that to heart, because a lot of they've got future races coming up, and it'll inform some of the decisions that they'll make. That definitely having the option to just donate it or get just 50% refund, or give the option to have a refund or not, will be indicative. We're going to host this again next week, Friday. Even though it's a softer lockdown, I don't think we're actually going to go into that much different, to be honest, besides being able to go train. So I still want to keep hosting this. If anybody has some ideas on what you want to discuss or topics to go forward, we're going to try and get some more international people next week to just get some perspective. But that's obviously fluid depending on how people's schedules work. Thank you everybody much for joining. It's been a great evening, and have a great weekend. I know there's not much happening, so if you're not doing anything, enter Spurgeon's UTD Backyard Challenge and raise some money for charity.
Right. Thanks, Mike. Matthew. Cheers, Abe.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Bye. Bye.
Cheers, Alex. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy your mini.
Everyone.